Hi, Ben.
Hey, Jalander. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna review your PR probably after this meeting. Um, but yeah, did you have a chance to look at my last question?
About Spinnaker, is it?
Yeah, it was more along the lines of Spinnaker is capable of producing events now, but no events are being produced. Is that
Oh,
correct?
so there are a couple of events that initially we placed just for a reference. I mean, like as an example, you can say so, but it will provide like it will produce some events. I think 4 or 5 events that are currently getting produced. So, but we can add more based on like what Spinnaker needs. So it can be extended and added. But
Oh,
there are a
do
couple
you
of events it produces right now.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Do you have a list of
Oh yeah, I'll send maybe I
Okay.
need to put that in user doc also.
Yeah,
So
that'd be
just yeah,
fantastic because I made the assumption that no events were getting sent, but it sounds like there's at least some. So yeah, having that list would be really, really awesome.
yeah.
Hello everyone, sorry I'm late.
No worries. Hello, hello.
Let me share. I think Emil mentioned he will a few minutes late as well. So it's just setting up the agenda. Feel free to add as well. Well, we can add more items to the agenda as we go. So I think given it's 3 past, it's probably good to get started. Let me just put the link to the notes in the chat. That's it for the recording. Welcome everyone to the CDEvents working group. My name is Andrea Frittoli, work for IBM. I'm in UTC, and as usual, feel free to add your name to the participant list if you would like to. Right, action items. The capitalizing URI is still outstanding as far as I know. And I started working on a proposal for 168 custom events. Just open it for a moment. And so I've done an introduction, proposal, so changes to the specification and to SDKs. What I wanted to do next is to add an example specifically for Harbor, what an event with a custom event would actually look like in practice with all the fields. And once that is done, I will share the link again to the channel. So then folks are welcome to review if they would like to. Any question on that? No.
So this
Okay.
would be a way for folks to send in events if none of the existing events fits their use case exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea is that when tools adopt CDEvents, we already have a set of events, and they would like to have a consistent way to send events, some of which may be CDEvents and other not, or not the official one. And it would be nice to have in the specification a way to have like CDEvents like events, so they can be produced and parsed with the help of the CDEvents SDK, follow a certain structure which is identical to the official CDEvents one, but then have additional like custom content and type that is defined by the tool.
Gotcha.
Right. About the OpenTelemetry CI/CD observability, the last week the TC approved the PR for the formation of the SIG, and the PR is actually approved now, and they decided to use an existing slot in the OpenTelemetry calendar for the meeting, which is actually exactly and perfectly overlapping with this time slot that we use for the CDEvents working group, which is unfortunate. So, well, I left a comment in the Slack about this today, and in future we might either try and move one of the two working groups or take turns in attending so that we can have some CDEvents presence in that group, which I think would be great. Even though I think OpenTelemetry, the OpenTelemetry SIG, as far as I understand, they focus on pipeline observability specifically, but I think the semantics they will use there might correspond to what we have on CDEvent side, and maybe that their scope will be wider than pipelines alone. So I think it would be good for us to be, or someone from us from this group to be in that community as well. Yeah. So I just copy pasted some recurring topics, but please let me know if there are things that you would like to discuss, particularly today. Welcome, Emil.
Yeah, so you guys left some comments on the ticket proposal. Thanks for that. It'd be great if we could go over some of those real quick.
Yep. Okay. Would you like to share your screen, or are you okay for me to open the link, or?
I'm okay for you to share.
Okay. Like to. Yes. Does this work?
Yeah. Just want to have a quick
Okay.
discussion around some of your comments between while Ben's here.
Okay, it looks like I can see the comments in this view. Okay, sorry.
That doesn't work then.
Okay, that's better.
Okay, so the first one's about whether tickets belongs with, I guess, incidents and continuous operations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so to be clear, I think I'm absolutely fine leaving them here for now. In future, they might stay here, or some maybe we might decide to move them. I think where they are in the specification does not really have any impact on the format of the event themselves. So moving them around is a relatively cheap operation.
Okay.
The other thing, there is some impact on the web page and stuff like that. But
Right. Yeah, Ben and I didn't really discuss where it should belong in here, so I just kind of stuck it here. I thought it made sense, but yeah, whatever you think is best there in the long run.
Yeah, sorry, I haven't had a chance to look at the comments, so I'm just trying to understand each one in particular. This first one. So what is the concern exactly, Andrea? Because so you say it might be related to different. I'm guessing just different events. Is that the idea? And you're saying like the three enums are not needed, or what are you saying here exactly?
no, for the first event and for the first comment here, I'm saying just asking whether an incident events, sorry, where ticket event should belong to the continuous operation .md file or not.
Oh, got it.
And I think, I mean, incident is one type of ticket, but there are other type of tickets that might not be related to continuous operation at all. But that said, I don't think there is any particular bucket that would really be better than
Appropriate.
this.
Yeah.
Appropriate, unless we created a new one, but I'm not sure we want to do that again. So at the
I
end,
think
it
it's
was just noting that. But
yeah. One thing I do want to say, so not all tickets might be a part of the SDLC lifecycle, or the lifecycle like you were saying. But all tickets, at least in practice, should be the starting point of some continuous operation, I would assume, right? I mean, obviously, there's going to be some people that don't create a ticket and just submit a change. But I know at least here at Apple, as well as in AWS, everything starts with a ticket. So maybe that's a little too based on my past experience. But maybe we can add a description to the ticket saying that not all tickets may be part of the SDLC, but in good practice, it should always serve as a starting point to outline a feature or something, or maybe not say. Maybe that's a little too opinionated, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe add to the description to say that there is that contingent. It may or may not be a part of it. Would that satisfy the concern here, or maybe just see if it makes sense to leave it here, and then if someone has like some feedback on it, move it. I'm just wondering what the action item is. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I guess the action was like raising the question what people thought about this, and if no one is concerned about them sitting in this file, I think there is no further
Okay.
action item.
Cool.
So yeah, I think there's a couple comments in here about like the enums, whether we should have custom. So yeah, I wasn't really sure how to handle this because I just wasn't really sure how to handle this because different ticketing systems or different companies may have different values that they would want here that would make sense to them. So I don't know, do we just like pick some generic ones, or make this like
And to give
labels?
a little bit of context too, sorry for jumping in here, is the enum custom is kind of interesting for Sean's particular use case from what I saw, which I was not familiar, because they use Jira, and Jira, you can stick in any sort of ticket type, like anything, and it'll just create it. So I think that's why custom was chosen, but I think other is also fine. So I'm just giving you the reasoning why we went with custom, but I think other or custom both serve as appropriate. Like other, I think might make more sense because custom feels maybe a little bit closer to Jira, as other just like, hey, if it's not this or this, just provide it's this other thing, right? So what do you think, Sean, about switching that?
Well, yeah, and just to provide like a little more background, when working on this, we were looking at several different ticketing systems out there. I was looking at Jira, we're looking at like GitHub issues, and then also we have a custom ticketing tool at Bloomberg. So they like 2 out of 3, Jira and our custom one have like a ticket type field, and then GitHub just kind of looks like the labels approach. Like anything you want to add, just throw in labels. So if you want to add a ticket type, make it a label. If you want to add a group that the ticket belongs to, make it a label. So, and I think Andre kind of mentioned that as well. So maybe we take that approach and just get rid of ticket type, get rid of a couple of those other fields, and just use labels. What do you guys think of that approach instead?
Maybe that's an easier start, I would say. So we don't need to fall down in deep discussions on namings of things.
Right.
Start with labels. I just want to add as a reference, before even CDEvents was started, we there was an initiative in the SIG interoperability group to try to get some consensus on what terms to use for different types of tools. We didn't go to any ticketing tools at that time, so Jira wasn't mentioned, but obviously the CI tools are there. So, so that was, I guess, a couple of years ago, and it hasn't been updated and hasn't been set yet. So, but anyway, I think if there should be an alignment between different tools, which we should then build the CDEvents protocol on top of, I think SIG interoperability is the place to at least keep such a alignment document. So maybe we could iterate on the document I pasted the link to there in the chat eventually, to also include like ticketing tools to handle that nomenclature in a good way. But
I probably would still keep ticket type, because I can definitely see some systems actually relying on an actual ticket type. Because the problem with labels is like some ticketing systems might have both. They might have labels and they might have like hard coded like actual ticket types, right? And I can give you an example, like Radar, what the AWS, or sorry, the Apple, uh, ticketing system that's installed on every Mac, does that. It has both, the concept of both. So that might be a little bit interesting, unless we expect users to use the labels as ticketing types. But then, like I said, they also have labels, so it's like, where would that go? Like, they would need to prefix it somehow or something to kind of parse and figure it out. So I'd be a little bit more hesitant to get rid of it, just because, like I said, systems could have both. Like some sort of labeling where it's like these custom annotations, as well as like these hard fixed ticketing types.
Yeah, I agree. And again, Jira and our other ticketing system do have a ticket type, and they have a concept of labels or tags. But I'm also trying to think, just to throw like a counter argument out there, I'm trying to think of like how, CDEvents is used and how those events are used. And I just wonder if, on the consuming side, you probably know what labels you're looking for that are, or maybe like a group. So like, okay, I'm just thinking like you're looking for all, I don't know, bugs, let's say, and you want to take an action every time a bug comes in. You could either look for, ticket type equals bug, or you could look for, event with a label of bug. So I think either way, like on the consuming side, you could make it work.
Right.
But you see there's a difference for having like
but what
a
I
ticket
was
type of
getting
bug and
at,
a label of bug.
what I'm getting at though, is like, you would still need it if you just have one field to separate both. Like, there needs to be a way of like understanding the difference between, like, as a consumer, knowing whether or not it's a bug versus like a bug ticket type versus a bug label, right? Like, those two things might be completely different, or it might be, maybe you're looking for a ticket type bug, and then label something else, and do you make the assumption that if it's not a part of your ticket types, then it must be a label? So like, you would have to then, I guess, like, parse through, or like, just, I guess, look for that in general. I guess that might be fine though. I'm just trying to understand like how the consuming would know the difference, and I guess they would need to know every single enum, and then act accordingly to it. So
I don't think it would be like an enum anymore if it's a label, but yeah, that is the trade-off. It might make things
yeah. And then another thing, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I think we'll need to think. I think we need to think about it some, because I definitely think getting rid of it could potentially have different implications towards different ticketing systems, because, like I said, like, the ticketing systems do make a distinction between label and ticket type. And so I'm just kind of, because like labels are typically just like metadata, not necessarily a ticket type, right? So I'm wondering if there's any sort of ramifications if we try to squeeze it into one enum, or sorry, not one enum field, just one field in general, which would be, I guess, a list. But yeah, I think a little bit. Let's think about this and have a little bit more discussion. I'll also put my thoughts on here after I thought about it some. So, and maybe that's probably the better next step.
I just wanted to add that I think to reiterate what Sean was saying, there are also ramification in keeping it, because some systems do not have this type, this ticket type thing like GitHub, which means that if you're looking for a type on issues and you don't know the source of the issue, it could be GitHub, it could be Jira or so. Either you need, so either you make sure that for things that are coming from GitHub, if they have a type label, then it goes into the type field. So you actually take one label out and put it in the type. Otherwise, then you don't have a consistent way to search for type across systems. So there is some implication in either choice, but yeah, I'm not saying that we should remove it. It was just
No, I'm just saying like, yeah, I think we need more thought on it is kind of like what I was getting at, because yeah, like I said, I think, like what you just said is absolutely true. GitHub obviously just has labels. And then, the two systems that me and Sean just mentioned have both. And I think it's choosing one that makes it easier for consumers in the best case in either situation, or you guys get what I'm saying. But yeah, I think just a little bit more discussion and thought on what the right approach is. I'm just a little concerned with removing it, just because, like I said, like removing that, now you're squashing two fields on a system where they make a clear distinction when they're different. So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah. So I think.
Sorry,
go ahead, Emil.
Okay, no, I think that's also that I agree with you, Ben, that the many ticketing systems probably make a distinguishment between the type and the labels. So it makes sense, of course, I think, to have a dedicated field for it. The question is what it should be, how it should be formatted. And I guess one way to do this, obviously, to be optional, because the systems like GitHub doesn't have it at all. But we could make it just a string without the enum restriction on it, just have it a free text string, and then it's up to the users to, at least initially, define whatever types, and we can eventually come to some conclusion when people start using these events that, well, it seems to make sense for most of the usages of CDEvents to have these different enums for this field, and then we can set those later on. Again, so we don't get stuck on details here when describing it.
Yeah. So one thing, so this, I think, was a little confusing, I think, to me originally when me and Sean was writing with this. So string enums, I assumed anyone can put anything in there. It's just that we have some defaults, like default enum values. Is that not right? Or are these, when we say stringed enums, these are the only right values?
So I was checking a bit, and I think you can kind of emulate this behavior or implement this behavior in JSON schema. So it's not the default thing. So if you specify a string enum, it must be one that you specify.
Oh,
but
got it.
You can actually do any of and combine an enum, a string enum with string.
With string, got it. Okay.
Right.
Maybe we
and that was, I was suggesting in another comment that maybe that's what we could do. We could, instead of specifying custom or other or anything or any value like that, we could have an enum that specifies some of the values, and then we could also allow like generic string,
anything.
like Emil was saying.
That's perfect. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted with string enum. But
yeah, that was kind of the intent of custom, not to get caught up on the word custom, but just to like make it a custom.
Any
like,
arbitrary, any arbitrary thing. Yeah.
Okay. So
We can call that out. Maybe we can call this so what would be the best way to represent that in this table? Would it be string or enum? Like, would we say that? Or like what do you guys think is probably the most clear way of saying, hey, this is an enum, we have some defaults, but if you need to provide something that's custom, please go ahead and put that. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I think string or enum
Okay.
might work. Or we might, and I don't know, I think in the core spec we have like a typing section. So we could even, if we want to provide some more details, we could put it in there and link it. So if someone wanted to check.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
And the other thing is then in the schema as well, that would need to be reflected though.
Of that. Yeah.
That you have the any of with the enum and the string.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we can definitely make that update then, or Sean can. Yeah, because that's perfect. That's exactly what we wanted, or that's what we assumed string to enum was originally, but it turns out it wasn't. So, but yeah, okay, that sounds perfect then.
Okay. So I think next comment then is this about the group.
Yeah, I added that. So first, when I read the description there, I saw that the group or project that the ticket is assigned to, and then I felt, well, if it is a group or a project, then why call it a group? Shouldn't it be like assigned to, and then assume it should be a group or something? But then later down, I see that there is also an assignee field, which then intends to be a person, I expect, a user somehow, developer or whatever. And then the question is, should those, one option could be to combine those into an like assignee object, which would contain maybe both the user or a group or such. And as well, there could be multiple assignees on one ticket, at least in GitHub, that's perfectly possible. I guess it is in Jira as well, isn't it?
Yep, that's a good point.
So it should be a list then of users or user IDs there.
Yeah, actually, I really like that group or object approach to combine both of those fields. I mean, I think that gives it a little bit more structure as well. I think one of the big things that me and Sean got caught up on is we were looking at all the APIs as we were writing this, so we kind of like mimicked what the APIs are writing. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I think having this as an object, as like assignee, makes it much more clear. So yeah, I would say +1 for me, Sean.
I'm not sure actually, because you can have multiple assignees, but typically the ticket is only in one group, like one bucket. You know what I mean? But like the assignees could be from different groups. So like say I'm from the back end group and somebody else from the front end group, but the ticket is only in one.
But I mean, that could be the object, right? Though, like it could be an assignee object, and then it could be like people or persons, right? And then that could be an array. Yeah. And then one group, exactly. That's kind of how I was envisioning it. I'm not too sure what you were thinking, Emil, but would that be appropriate?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I mean, we also use Jira, but we have a lot of different custom fields, I guess, that we have created. I'm not sure exactly what of those are core Jira concepts and what are things that we have come up with ourselves.
So for Jira, I was thinking the group would be like the project that it's in, and
the Jira project, you mean?
The Jira project, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And then the assignee would be, the assignee.
Yeah, because in our case, we also have a team property in each ticket. We have a sub-project property, which is a separate thing from the Jira project. So I mean, we have different such groupings, and some of them are multi-choice and some are single choice. And
Interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
So more research, it sounds like.
yeah, well, I think that's the risk if we had many fields is that, you know, we go deeper into the data model of the different tools, and
Yes,
we
definitely.
find
Yeah.
disagreement. That's why, or inconsistencies. That's why I was suggesting maybe in the beginning we could take some of these and put them in as like generic metadata, so where you can have like key values, and say, you know, you could have a list in the labels where you have like group equals something, and then again group equals something, and then it could be like all the groups that all the tags or the groups, you can call them different ways, I guess, where this belongs to. I mean, if you look at GitHub, I think there is a concept of project there, but I think a ticket could belong to multiple projects.
Yeah. And have
if I'm
different
not
statuses
mistaken.
actually even in different projects.
And then you can define custom fields in the project, so you can have different kind of grouping that are, you know, they can happen in as flexible as you want. So it becomes really difficult to try and get that down to a single group.
Yeah,
We're
like
only we're only like 3 people, and we're already like having all sorts of conflicts. So.
yeah. I would be, so here's my thinking. So I completely agree with Andre, you know, like, you know, we want to stay away from the actual representing the APIs, right? We want to make it as flexible as possible. However, anytime we add sort of like tags or whatnot, it makes interoperability that much more difficult. Especially if you plan on changing like tooling, for example, right? Like it becomes much more difficult to make all those updates and adapt like all the you know, all, if especially if the tools comes with CDEvents, right? Now, you know, if it has custom metadata, any consumer that expects to deal with that need to be updated, as opposed to having like hard fields. So I would be a little bit more flexible in making potentially both of these arrays. I would need to look at the GitHub use case, because a GitHub issue is tagged to a repo, and then you can reference it, but I don't know if that necessarily makes it a part of multiple repos though. So I think I would be safe to say that a group is typically only, I would say I've only ever seen it as a singular thing. I've never seen it as an array. You know, and then like I said, for the GitHub use case, I think it's tied to a single repo, right?
No,
so
it doesn't need to be. It doesn't need to be that. So and you can have, I mean, what I think what Andrea mentioned there as projects is not the repo, it's the concept of GitHub project.
oh, GitHub
You
project,
can have
I
multiple
see.
projects, right? In an organization, you can have multiple projects, and the same ticket could actually belong to multiple of those projects.
Got it. You're not talking. Okay, cool. I saw. Okay, so I thought you meant like GitHub issues, but you're talking about the actual GitHub like project, like ticketing, like actual system. Got it. Okay. But even though those tickets are still created for each individual repo, I thought though too, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. It depends what you want to map the group to. Sorry, Eric.
No,
sorry, Emil. I even say your name wrong.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
Oh yeah, the issues are created within one repository, that's for sure in GitHub. But still, you can have GitHub projects, which is not the same as a repository, which you can have multiple of, and one issue within one of your repositories could belong to multiple different GitHub projects.
Right. So the question is, do you want to model The GitHub projects or the GitHub issues or both? And I think
We should
both
try
with
to switch focus a bit, if I may propose. I mean,
yes.
we should see the protocol as a way to describe the minimum need a consumer of this data would expect or would need to be able to act on it in any way. And if there is more data that we cannot or don't know how to align on or such things, there should also be, I would say, which I actually miss in this proposal, I made a comment on that just now, a reference to a URI where you can fetch more data about the actual ticket. So I would expect like a Jira URI to be put in here, the ticket URI. And then for every field that is Jira specific, then you should go to that URI to fetch it. If you as a consumer of the data know how Jira works and what the API is, you can go there and fetch the data you want, because then you know what fields to look for in that ticket.
Yeah,
but the generic things should be part of the event, I would say. The ones that are specific and also the ones that are mutable.
Useful.
I mean, we should describe at creation time what was the values of these different fields, because the assignee, for example, could change over time, and I guess that's what the updated event is about, to change that. But you don't really know what is, and based on that event, the updated event, then you know what was it changed to, but you don't actually know if that is still true. There could be a new event coming which you haven't seen yet, which has actually changed it. So if you want to know the most recent information, you should always go to the Jira system itself and fetch it for you, unless you're after what was the assignee at this point in time, or something like that. Depends on what the consumer wants the information to be used for.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with like 99% of that. I don't like fetching the URL for a couple reasons. One, for companies like us, Apple, for instance, the getting access to like some of the API, like getting access to the APIs is actually a lot more difficult, especially for just like smaller teams at Apple. Bigger teams even have issues with it, but I mean, they'll probably already have like API keys, tokens, whatever to make these calls. So that's why I'm a little bit hesitant. And then also when you get the URL, right, you need to know what you're talking to as well to be able to make sense of that data. So you would have to inspect the URL. Hey, is this a Jira URL? Is this a GitHub URL, right? Which makes it a little bit of a I think it makes it ugly for the consumer to do that work, to figure out where it's going, to be able to make sense of the data.
No, I would argue against that, I guess. I mean, for example, in the source code events, I assume at least that we have references to the SEM system, like Gerrit. Yeah, we have it in the repository event, for example. Repository events, we have a view URL and also a URL, which is actually a URL to the actual system.
Yeah. If we make the assumption though that the URL is going to the actual ticketing system API itself, right? But there might be some front end wrapper or facade in front of it, like for instance, in Apple, right? There's many different companies that have facades that people will go through, which changes the APIs to make them even more simple or different, or adds more metadata, right? So you still need to know where that URL is going, even though the ticket originated in some place, right? So that's kind of the issue that, well, I'm coming at it from just like how this would work internally at Apple. And I can give you a really concrete example. So for instance, we're the Spinnaker team. We have another team, which is Apple Maps, right? That uses Spinnaker. They have their own Spinnaker, but they have their own facade in front of it, their own APIs. So when customers go to talk to Spinnaker, they have their own custom APIs to go do something, right? So if we were to give them back a URL, If it's coming from our team, it's going to look like the original APIs. If it goes to this other team, even though it's still the same CD system, well, it's a little bit different because, you know, tickets is a little bit more different in that the URL is going to be different for this particular team. And the reason why this is a bigger issue for ticket as opposed to the CD system. The CD system, usually you're hitting some system that's completely independent, so that URL, you know, is going to be different. But for a ticketing system, if a system's like, hey, you know, like our team uses these URLs, you know, so let's, you know, these CDEvents, you know, as a producer, so let's go ahead and make the URL go through this facade, you know, for whatever, right? But then you could have another ticketing system that's like, hey, you know, these are the APIs. Let's go to the raw APIs. So I guess sorry, I'm kind of thinking out loud. So I guess what you would need to do for the ticketing system is, if it's going through that facade, you would have to say that it is the ticketing system with a different API, I guess, would have to be the solution here. I think. I don't know. Like I said, I would have to think about it some more. But yeah. Like I said, I think it gets a little bit, you know, like I said, like these use cases, like, you know, like you have to think about like all these particular use cases. But yeah, that's definitely. I would still have to think about it some.
Yeah. Let me just comment on the URL or non-URL discussion there slightly. So from my point of view, I see it as being a stronger case for security and integrity if you would provide a URL instead of providing all these details in the event themselves, because those details could actually be things that you don't want to reveal to anyone. But if you instead just provide a URL, then if you, as a consumer of that event, is authorized to access the ticketing system, then you can go get the information. If you're not authorized to use it, the ticketing system yourself as a consumer, you might not even be authorized to actually see the data that is in the event. So I would argue, at least in our case, that's the case. So we see each system that we interface from different events, they should be have their own authorization system and own roles and everything set up for them. So keep the data in the events to a minimum and then go to the system to find it if you are authorized to access it. That's the way we use the events at the moment, at least. And
right.
We will never be able to describe everything, all details of a ticket, for example, in one event.
Yeah.
More information you could want to fetch from the system itself. So I think at least an optional URL, I think, should be there.
Yeah. I think an optional URL is definitely fine. I guess I was just trying to understand, like, my assumption was that the URL would be used in place of like getting the groups and the assignees. But I think those are still important piece of information that should exist on the actual ticket event. So
I can just throw in my 2 cents real quick.
Yeah, please.
So I think optional URL can't really hurt. But from my perspective, like with our custom ticketing system, it's not even like a REST interface or anything. It's all in the Bloomberg terminal. So all a URL would provide is like a link that a human could click on.
Exactly, same with us.
Like another program would need to know how to interface with the terminal. So I think it would get all the information it needs just from like the source and like the ticket number, and then it would need to know like how to actually retrieve more information about that ticket. So a URL wouldn't necessarily help in our case, but again, like an optional URL field, I think would be.
But I also think that the human readable URL endpoint would be perfectly fine to have in a ticket. I mean,
I think that'd be very helpful.
If you send this event on a visualizer system, what wants to show this event to the end user, to the developer or whatever, if there is a link there to the actual ticket in your human-friendly ticketing system, then the person could go there and read whatever is there, even though there's no machine readable API on it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I think
there could be two different URLs, of course, as well. And that's what we have in the repository event as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
URL on a
Okay. Sorry, I think I think at least for me, I don't know if this was true for you, Sean, but it seems like I thought you were talking about something completely different, Emil. I thought you were talking about getting rid of the group in assignee and just having the URL, but it sounded like this is just more of an optional field, at least for now, you know, unless we want to make it required. But it sounds like it's going to be an optional field where you can get more data, or at least have some, you know, if it is, you know, some URL where people can even click would be useful. So
yeah, this should probably be on all the ticket events, right? Like the
yeah, definitely.
updated and resolved. So I'll add that.
But yeah, I agree with what Emma was saying, that we need to keep the consumer perspective in mind. So what do we want to do with these fields? Like if you think of like building a dashboard that can visualize your tickets across different kind of systems, then what kind of information do you need to produce this view?
Yeah.
Right? And then you can have the view URL where you can actually click as a human and go and get more details. But what kind of grouping do you want to make it possible to happen in the initial view before you go and, you know, click into the link? So, and yeah, again, I think it makes sense probably to have a certain amount of data. It's probably a fine line. What we want to have here, and I tend to, you know, be a little bit more on the side of less
Caution.
data, at least caution to begin with. But yeah, I'm not saying that I'm like opposed on having this data is proposed here. Probably like you were saying, we might want to make some of these arrays, but
yeah. One thing that I think is kind of interesting, that I'm kind of curious to get everyone's feedback here, is generally when you're listening in on tickets, if you're a consumer, if you're specifically a specific team, right, you're really looking for the group, right? But if you're listening for the ticketing event, all events or all ticket events are coming into your consumer, right? And then you would need to say, hey, if it's not my group, just it's a no op, right? Is that the behavior that we want? If it's not part of my group, just not do anything. If it is part of my group, do whatever it is that I'm planning to do with this information, or like what's the idea there, I guess.
I can just talk from my experience on using the similar events. We have similar events in Eiffel, as I think I mentioned somewhere. We don't actually trigger any actions on those at the moment. We use them more as a reference. And in there, we actually mostly use the URL to find more information. We use them mostly to tie them into the source change event, saying that this source change was delivered and it is related, or it solves this and that issue, this and that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we use the ticketing events today in Ericsson, the similar ones.
Okay. All right. So I guess I would have to think about, like, you know, what use cases where it would be pertinent for a specific team to only care about the group. Maybe that's not a big deal though, but it's something that I wanted to ask, you know, but it sounds like, Emil, since you guys have something very similar, it sounds like it's not an issue. So maybe it's just like thinking about something that's not too big of a problem.
Yeah, I guess we have automations on top of Jira events explicitly as well. I mean, we have, or at least as developers, we are subscribing to the tickets themselves, and we get mails when things happen, and that's what we act on. We don't act on any events on it. We act on the mails we get when things are updated.
Got it.
Updated, so yeah.
So like assignee, do we even want that in the ticket created event? Is that useful?
I think
it's quite seldom that it's assigned already at creation time, isn't it?
Yeah, probably.
Could be.
It can happen, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, I think assignee, if it's a required field, maybe we can make it optional. That's like one option. Well, the reason, so my thinking is like all the different types of systems that might want to use this like ticketing event, like the consumers, right? And I'm trying to understand like things that are important. And the biggest one that I can think is like potentially a visualizer. Like for instance, like if I'm a manager at a company and I want to see when the ticket was created by, or when it was created by, let's say, Alice, and then all tickets that were assigned to Bob and all tickets that were assigned to Bob, and how long that took to make it through the whole life cycle, then that could be really good for metrics. So it could be important, especially for like metrics data. But I don't know. I really don't like gathering metrics for like individual users. Like I feel like that could make a workplace probably pretty toxic, but it could be useful though. So yeah, I don't know. I could definitely see managers, especially like the higher you go in the corporate ladder. I could definitely see them carry more and more about maybe groups, maybe less about assignees, but definitely maybe for promotions. Like if they're looking for promotions, like maybe like something's on the fence, they could be like, hey, this person's actually delivered 50 different things and then they were all really pertinent and they had no issues, like that could also be really useful. But like I said, it's a double-edged sword. It could be really useful, or it could like throw someone under the bus. So yeah, I guess that's just the nature of things. But I think it could be useful though, for definitely for metrics.
I wonder if I mean, from the discussion today, I'm just thinking, I think in the documentation we always try to give some hint of how the data in the fields is produced. So if you're an event producer, how you where the data what that field means, but maybe we could start adding things like use cases where or how that could be consumed, either in the spec or in some other documents for us as a reference, that maybe make this discussion easier.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of stuff in our HackMD, don't we, Sean? That like use case, like we have a bunch of stuff. We have ones I think in a repo as well. Like we have a folder like with use cases, and in our HackMD we also have like use cases, and I think we have some. If we don't, we could probably make some like charts too to make things a little bit easier to read. Maybe that's the next step as well, to kind of make it easier to understand, like what you were saying, Andre, how these events were consumed. Because like the one that we specifically talked about, Sean and I, is how tickets were make it into the SDLC. And this is where we were starting thinking about with like commits, for example, and what that would look like, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Did we actually expand on that on the proposal here, Sean, or did we did not include that?
No, I just included a link to that document.
Oh, got it. Okay. So there's a link to that document. I wonder if we should probably just embed it all in here. I think that might be a little bit more user friendly. What do you think, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm not sure where is the best place. Maybe in the spec here, or maybe we could
Separate
have
MD,
like separate documents. We could create a folder where we capture this kind of design discussion that we are having, so that we keep track of why we did things the way we did, and not maybe in 6 months, or why did we have this
question
failed,
it.
and
Yeah.
and because I think it's a lot of interesting discussions that we are having, and then want to make sure that we capture those somewhere. And also if someone is implementing this and trying to decide like,
The right
I try
way.
to
Yeah.
the right way, like
Yeah.
I'm implementing this from GitHub, and where do I get the group from, or do I get it from here and there, or how do I use it for? And
Mhm.
and we are talking about those things, and maybe it's good to track them somewhere. I don't think we have a good place for that today, so maybe we could have those kind of I don't know, an extra folder or an extra file for each bucket or something, or an extra section at the end. I don't know, something
Yeah, to make that a
somewhere where
little bit
we
more
we
clear.
document this.
Yeah, I definitely like that approach. I definitely think we need a little bit more of the explaining side rather than just the JSON and the schema. So I think yeah, I definitely think figuring out where that could live is probably a good start. Okay, cool. What do you think, Sean? Is that something that you feel that I think either of Andres' suggestions is fine. So you know, whatever you think's best, you can go. I think just take what we wrote in that HackMD and just figure out if you want to put it at the end of the file or if you want to actually create a folder. I think everyone's okay with either approach. Sound good?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll just put it more information in the README for now, and we can figure out what to do with it. Or sorry, not in the README, but the description of this.
Yeah.
And I think we can add to it incrementally. I'm not saying we should block this PR on that, and just want to make sure we start capturing this kind of discussion.
Could I also have a small suggestion or request as well? I'm starting to understand how the updated event should be used and when it would be sent, because as I see it, when we work in Jira, for example, we do updates of the tickets very frequently. I mean, we add some label, we remove some label, we change assignee, we change a theme to it, we have a proposed release date and things that we add always. Should each of those updates be in one individual event, you think, or should it be like grouped together in some way? Because otherwise it will be quite hard to make sense of what is the state of the ticket right now.
Yeah, I think the way Jira does it, like you can update multiple fields at once, and then once you click submit, it sends a change for all of those updates at once. So I think it would just mimic that. It would just take whatever Jira events, whatever events come from Jira.
All information in each updated event then, not just the changed information. Or
sorry, say that again.
Will it include all information about the ticket in every event, not just the information that has changed?
No, just the changed information, but all the changes. So if you change multiple fields and then you click submit in Jira, it'll send all those changes at once.
No, I mean, in Jira, that's not how we work, at least. I mean, if it set the label, then the label is set directly, and then you change some other field, then that field is set directly.
Right. But if you go into like edit ticket,
oh yeah,
multiple fields, then you'll get an array of changes.
Yes.
But yeah, if you just change each thing, then yeah, I would expect to get an event for each of those.
Yeah.
And then on the consuming side, my use case, at least on the consuming side, would be you're probably looking for like a specific change, maybe a label being added or something. And then you would just look for like that change that you're interested in and maybe take an action every time a label's added or something.
Right. But the use case is take some action based on a certain label being set in the ticket or something. That's
some specific change that you're interested in.
Great, good. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we are at time. I guess we could, if we have more questions on the proposal, we could continue on Slack, so we don't have to wait until next week. If there is something we need to discuss, we cannot understand through the comments. But it seems to me that in general, I mean, we have questions about the semantics and the array or not array, but in general, I think, and I don't see any objections to the proposal in general. So I think we can continue to iterate on this, and hopefully, get it in soon. Anything else?
I did have one question that is, I think, pretty important. So I wanted to, before we leave, I just want to take a couple minutes here. So I found out why the outcomes are the enums that they are. So originally, when we first created these specs, these enums, those were the enums in the spec. And then when Ollie created that PR, he just copied what was there, like that was already there. So that pass, fail, cancel, and error, and just moved it over from what it looks like. But the biggest comment that I wanted to mention, though, is this failure. Is that my question is, should that be part of the ticketing event, or should that be a separate event? Because although it happened for the ticket, when the ticket was running, it seems like it's also independent as well. Like the system failed, right? Not the ticket, or sorry, not the ticket, sorry, not the test, right? So having the failure in the test makes it not really relevant, other than it failed, the system failed, right? Like, and I'm wondering if it makes more sense, like we have the service predicate, if it makes more sense to have a failure event or an error event or something of that nature that could be sent up, as opposed to having this in a test. Because my thinking there is that if we start capturing failures of the system or the service even, then that leaks into basically everything that interfaces with anything, right? Like for instance, build, right? If a system fails, then the build failure isn't the build failing, it would be the system failing on the build, right? When doing the build, right? So we need to be consistent there, but it's not. When we talk about build failures, it's the build that's failing, and builds don't even care about the system failure use case. So it seems like it's this failure enums not in the right place. That's what I was thinking, but I wanted to get your guys' opinions here.
I think I can agree to that, but and the failure is more of an incident to me. So we have the incident
Yes,
event.
exactly. Yes,
So,
yes.
but then there could be, of course, sure, a reference or some link between the test case
Yep.
event and also the incident event, saying that this test case finished failed, and it was probably due to this failure, if that's known by the testing system. Sure, I agree. Yep.
Okay, cool. Andrea, any thoughts on that? I just want to be sure because I removed it, but I want to at least have a discussion on why it was removed, and I'll put that in the commit as well. But I wanted to make sure everyone was okay with that.
I'm not sure. I don't think I have enough context to give a
Context?
full answer. No, I think I remember, but I mean, for a test, I mean, if I'm running unit tests, it could be that I have failure or error, but it's not necessarily due to some external system. And it's a semantic difference between failure and error that is quite useful in the test type of environment to have that distinction, whether the error situation is due to a specific. It's kind of a distinction between it's a distinction between an error where on something that you had an assertion on, so something that you expected, or an error on something that you didn't have an assertion on, so you didn't expect that part to fail. And it could
wouldn't that just be a failure then, like in general? Like, why is there two? I guess my question.
So, well, if you're analyzing test results, it's usually useful to know whether the failure, the problem with the failure was caused by something that you expected to fail, that it might fail or not, so where you had an assertion on or not. And so that's the difference between error and failure. And in some cases, failure could be due to something that maybe an external system that you rely on that is not.
Yeah, but like I said,
working.
but that's irrelevant to the system. If that mattered, then build should have the same effect, right? Like build predicates, it would need the same thing.
I don't think so, because I mean, build, it's either successful or not successful.
Yeah, but
I don't think
pulls
you
in,
have specific assertions on builds.
Yeah, you don't. But what I was getting at though is like, so you have builds that failed because it failed because it was a compiler error, or it failed because it couldn't, the artifact system was down, right? Like that's how I'm understanding your failure for the test use case, is that these external systems that cause these failures matter, which I don't think they do. Or you talk about something completely different and I'm misunderstanding. That's also completely possible. So based off of your look, I'm like, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
Yeah, so if you're troubleshooting test, if you know that there is an error, it means that an assertion that you made in the code of the test was not met. And so if not,
yeah, that I understand. But what about the other case?
Well, the other case, you basically cannot really say if your assertion was true or false, because something prevented it to get to that state.
Like what? Oh, I see. So you're saying like the test failed to compile, for example, would be
right.
one.
I don't know. You're trying to see, you have a unit test that tries to set a field into an object and check whether it is actually set. But when you create an object, you cannot create it because of some other side effect that happened. So you cannot go and check because you couldn't even get to that point, but you don't have an assertion on that. So if you're trying to understand the failure in the test, so what went wrong in the test, if it's an error, usually you go and look at your assertions. If it's a failure, it's that it's a different kind of condition, right?
Okay. Okay, now I understand the full context. Okay, so my understanding of what error and failure were, it sounds like it was actually completely different than what you intended it to be. So, okay, now it makes more sense. Okay, let me think about this some. That's why I wanted to have this discussion. So thank you, Andre, for that context. And then I'll figure out, because Emil did have a link on how his system describes outcomes, and I'm wondering, if his approach or if that that approach makes sense, or if we should just include failure and error, maybe different names. But yeah, failure and error, I think is feasible now that I understand what you're saying. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. I'll go back and think about this then.
Okay. All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.